All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to open up Church Windows here. I already have it open. I opened accounting ahead of time to save time just by clicking on the word accounting, and that opens up the accounting module. We again are going to look at subtotals today. Those are oftentimes confused with sub-accounts, but they're different things. Sub-accounts are actual accounts that total up to give you a total of whatever accounts you put under it. Today we're looking at subtotals. Subtotals are not an account. What they are is it's a category or a grouping that you create, and it's just the name of whatever that grouping is you're trying to get a total of, and then you can move accounts into that subtotal to give you a subtotal. And you can have up to 5 levels, so you can put multiple subtotals within other subtotals. We're just going to look at some of the basics, some of the easiest things today, but they're really flexible, and you can arrange them in any order. You can click and drag and drop and move them around. Once you start working with the subtotal screen, I think you'll see it's pretty easy to work with, especially with the click and drag. Let's go ahead and look at the subtotals. To access that, along the top, we'd click on the words Manage Accounts. Now notice if I had Transaction clicked on, I have different buttons underneath. If I click Manage Accounts, changes the buttons underneath. And I want the third button over here, Subtotals. So we'll click on Subtotals. If you're looking in your book, there's an image of this screen. We see the most broad subtotals. You have 5 different types of accounts. And for each of those types, there's a general subtotal that gives you a total of all those, like your assets, liabilities, fund balances, income, and expenses. So your 1 accounts, 2, 3, 4s, and 5s. And the program comes preset with a general subtotal for each of those 5 categories of account, and it will just give you a total of all of those. If you don't need categories within your different accounts, then you're fine just having those general subtotals that total up all your assets or all your liabilities and so on. But most of you are probably here because you want to do some categories within those and create some subtotals. So if you're following along in your workbook, I moved ahead to page 23. Now, if there's a plus sign in front of the subtotal, and we can tell these are subtotals because it's just words with no account number after them. If you don't use account numbers, then the difference between subtotals and accounts is a subtotal here shows this big arrow. And when I show accounts in a bit, you'll see the icon for accounts is a little different. But if I click the plus sign beside any of these, that plus sign is just telling me there is something within these. And if I look, I already have some subtotals created within all my different types of accounts. And we can even see under total expenses here, I put a subtotal within a subtotal. Same down here, if I go down to my total designated expenses, I have some subtotals within there. All right, let's go back up. We are going to create a new subtotal. We want to create, we have so many investments now that instead of having a subtotal for total current assets and investments, we want to create a long-term savings and investments subtotal within our assets. So first thing we need to do if we're going to create a new subtotal within total assets is we want to click on the word total assets. If I wanted to create an income subtotal, I wouldn't want total assets highlighted. I'd click on total income. So the first thing you want to do when you're going to create a subtotal is click on where you want that subtotal to fall under. So I want this to be within my assets. So I want to click on total assets. And now I'm going to, in the lower left, click on add new subtotal. And as soon as I do that, if you look in the upper right, under subtotal details in the field subtotal name, my cursor is flashing and waiting for me to type in my new subtotal. So I'm going to leave the word total. I like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and add long-term savings and investments. Now, if you'd like, you can have a header, and what that would be is just wording before all of the accounts that it's going to give me a subtotal for. So I have a little indication of what these grouping of accounts is before the end of them. So I want to see a header, so I'm going to click display as header, and then I can actually type in what I want my header text to be. I just want it to say long-term savings and investments. So I can just click off of that now, and there's no save button or anything. It automatically saves your changes. If something's wrong, you could edit or delete it to add it correctly, but mine, I typed everything in correctly. My fingers did what I asked. So if you look now, I have highlighted my new subtotal, total long-term savings and investments. Now currently on my screen, all I'm showing is my subtotals. I want to now move some accounts into that subtotal. So I'm going to, down at the bottom of the screen, click on Show Accounts. Now watch this button. It's a multi-purpose button. When I click on it, it now says Hide Accounts. So that's how, if you just want to see subtotals and you're showing your subtotals and accounts, you can hide those. Maybe you just want to rearrange subtotals and you don't need all the details. So I can say hide, and now it's not showing any accounts. But we want to see accounts because we're going to move some into that new subtotal. So I'm going to click on Show Accounts. Now you can see anything not in a subtotal currently is showing directly below the most broad or general category. So directly under total assets, I see my National City CD. It's a new investment I added, and that's what made me decide I'm getting so many investment accounts and savings that I'm going to create a new category just for those. But notice my subtotals have the little arrow to the left of them. Accounts, they have an account number, but if you don't use account numbers, you can tell the difference because accounts have this little icon with looks like a piece of paper with writing on it to me. So I want to move some of my accounts into my new total long-term savings and investment subtotal. There's two ways you can move your accounts. Some people find one easier than the other. Really, I think it depends on how many accounts you have, because you can click and drag, or I can use the area over to the right to move them. Let me show you both of those. I'm going to click on my National City CD, and I'm just going to drag it down. Now notice as I drag down, it opens each subtotal and shows me what's within that. So if you have a lot of accounts, that might be cumbersome. But I'm just going to keep moving down until I see that total long-term savings and investments. And notice if I'm hovering over an account, it's not letting me drop that in an account. It has the no signal symbol. But as I move to long-term savings and investments, we see the arrow just to the left of it letting me know that's where it's going to drop it. And if I just let go, it dropped that within total long-term savings and investments. Now I'm going to move some of my things out of, close some of these up. Under my total current assets and investments, let's see, do I have anything here that I consider savings or investments? Yes, I have my money market. I want to move that to my long-term savings and investments. So the other way to move things is I can click on the account, and then over to the right here it says move Fifth Third Money Market to, and if I click the down arrow, I see my different asset subtotals. I can't move it to a different type of account, but I can see all my asset subtotals. And if I just click on total long-term savings and investments and then click move account, it moves that down to the subtotal. So again, if you have a lot of accounts where as you're clicking and dragging, it's opening all of those and takes a while to move down to where you want, you might find that the move function over on the right side is easier. So I'm going to move my savings account into my long-term savings and investments. And I'm going to move my Lynch Schwab investments into that investments. So again, I'm just clicking over. I'm clicking on the account first, and then over to the right, I'm clicking the down arrow and choosing that long-term savings and investments and clicking move account. All right. So top of 25, again, if you're following along in workbook pages, I have to edit a subtotal now because, close all these up here. Actually, we'll just click hide accounts. Now notice I have total current assets and investments and total long-term savings and investments. That's a little redundant, two subtotals with investments. Since I moved everything that had to do with investments out of this subtotal current assets and investments. I want to rename this just total current assets. So all I have to do is click on the subtotal, and then just over here to the right I see the details for that subtotal. All I'm going to do is backspace out and investments. And I'll leave my header text at current assets. And now if I click on show accounts, we see that we have our total assets, and within there our total current assets. And it's just our current assets, moved savings and investments out. We see our fixed assets. And then under our total long-term savings and investments, we've moved all of our savings and investments under that subtotal. Now, perhaps we want to see these in a different order on the report. Right now, we would have current assets, then fixed assets, then our long-term. Maybe we want to see our long-term first, and then our fixed assets, and then our current assets. Now, I didn't tell you what I was doing there, I just did it. So to move our subtotals, we can highlight one and use the arrows just to the right here to change the order. So I'm going to put long-term savings first, and then my fixed assets, and then my total current assets. So really easy to rearrange those if I want to see them in a different order. Excuse me. Now I'm on page 26, top of 26, deleting a subtotal. Deleting subtotals is really easy. Maybe we decided we don't want our funds all divided. We want everything in our funds just in total funds. To delete a subtotal, first we would have to move things out of that subtotal. Notice here, if I click on total fixed assets, down here, delete subtotal is grayed out. So it's not going to let me delete a subtotal that already has accounts in it. But what you can do is I can click and drag and drop that account within a different subtotal. And now if I click on that total fixed asset fund, it's going to let me click delete. Now I didn't delete an account, didn't delete anything important. It was just a subtotal. So if you ever do that in error, it's really easy to just click right back on total fund balances and then click add new subtotal, and you could add that back in. So pretty easy. Let's go ahead, now that we've looked at how we can create subtotals, rearrange them, edit, delete them. Let's look at a report with subtotals on it. Let's look at our balance sheet. So I'm going to go to Reports, Export, Financial, and choose Balance Sheet. Or you could do the multiple reports. I tend to go and pick single reports up at the top. I want to show accounts with a zero balance. I'm going to go to my Detail tab and make sure everything is checked here, because we don't want to just see subtotals. I want you to see all the detail, the accounts within those. All right, then let's click Print and take a look. So if we look up at the top, we see our long-term savings and investments, and notice there's our header text. It's in italics, bolded a little bit, and then we see all of our savings and investments, and then a subtotal for those. So the bold wording about halfway across the page is the actual subtotal name, whereas the header text is what you see at the beginning before it shows the accounts. But here we have three nice divisions or groupings or subtotals for our assets, and then then at the very end of our assets, it gives us a grand total of all of those. And if we look through, you can see the different subtotals we've created. Now, I'll point out here, this right about the middle where it says pass-through accounts, this is an example of a liability with sub-accounts. So those are italicized, but when you look at the writing that's about halfway across the page and indented over, that is going to be in italics versus subtotals show in bold. So if you're looking at reports and you're confused as to whether or not it's a subtotal or a sub-account, subtotals show bolded, sub-accounts show italicized. Now that's about all I wanted to show you. And Ross, there's a question that's coming in that I'm just going to answer out loud because I think that's important for everybody. When would you recommend using sub-accounts instead of subtotals and vice versa? I personally find subtotals a lot easier to work with. You can pull accounts out to report on singly. However, if you want an account to carry over a balance, the memorial fund is a great example, I think, of when you might want sub-accounts. Actually, that was a good report to show it on. Let me go back to the balance sheet and show you. I believe we have the memorial fund set up as a sub fund. Yes, the memorial fund is a good time to possibly have sub funds, because at the end of the year, when you open a new year, all of your accounts bring forward a beginning balance. Oftentimes, churches might set up a memorial fund and then create income and expense accounts for each of the specific named memorials. The problem with that is when you roll over to a new year, your income and expense accounts are going to start at zero. So you'd have to look at your prior year's income and expense accounts for that memorial to see what was left over. The money would all be in the memorial fund they're linked to, but it would just show one grand total. Here we see a memorial fund balance with sub-funds for each of those specific named memorials. And each of these sub-funds is going to carry over a beginning balance next year, where we can see how much we have to start the new year with. Whereas if we had each of these named memorials set up as just income and expense accounts, those are going to start at zero. So I think the memorial fund's a great example of where you would want a sub fund or a sub account rather than a subtotal. Somebody said, how do you print a report that shows a particular fund balance without all the other funds? Okay, it's not really subtotals, but you can, on most of your reports, let me go to like the treasurer's report. Here you can select a specific fund. If I select my memorial fund balance on this report, then it's only going to show me my income and expense accounts that are linked to the memorial fund. It really depends on the report you're asking for. If I do a balance sheet, I don't think that has funds. Let's see. Fund activity report. This one you could, on the funds tab, unselect all and then just select the one fund you'd like. Things like a general ledger. On this report, you can ask for a specific fund. So it really depends on the report you're asking for, but a lot of the reports will let you choose one specific fund, or you could create a custom account group of just the accounts you want to see. Somebody asked, is there a way to stagger the sub-account totals so there would be more than one column of numbers? The reports, you can arrange the order of how you want to see your subtotals. You can choose what columns you want to see, but no, we can't make it stagger those sub-accounts. You could export it out, though, and then manipulate it however you like in another program. Someone asked, what's the difference between a sub-fund and a sub-account? Nothing. I mean, a sub-fund is it's a sub-account. It's just a number 3 account. And sub-funds, the main difference there is if you create a fund with a sub-fund, the sub-funds have the income and expense accounts linked to them rather than the main parent fund that just gives you a total of all those. And when you create an account with sub-accounts rather than subtotals, that main parent account, be it a asset, liability fund, income or expense, you never post anything directly to that main account. It just gives you a total of the sub-accounts that are under it. Someone asked, do you foresee an update that would allow me to do that without exporting to Excel? You can export in almost any format you like. If you just, when you're exporting, if you click the little arrow just to the right of export or send via email, then you can choose what format you would like to export reports out of Church Windows as. So there's quite a variety of exports, and I don't anticipate them adding other formats, but if there's a format you don't see or you need, definitely give us that suggestion and we can pass it on to the programmers. All right. Are there questions? I don't think I'd asked that yet, but I'd gotten to the end of what I wanted to show you and saw a question come across that I thought really should be answered out loud, because I know there is frequently confusion between subtotals and subaccounts. Any other questions? I apologize. We're at 2:22. I hadn't realized. If you need to leave, just you can exit the room with the little X in the upper right of your GoToWebinar toolbar. But I'm going to stick around with Ross and answer more questions. Somebody asked, will there be an update to format reports internally without exporting? Not that I'm aware of. Because, I mean, you can do a lot with the reports in Church Windows as to what you want to see and the order you want to see it in. And the export function allows you to export in so many different formats. I am not aware of there being any update coming soon that will allow you to format reports internally, no. But again, if you have suggestions, email, or you can on a support call give us those suggestions, and we do enter those in a database for the programmers. So whether or not they implement those depends on how many people ask for those and how difficult it is to do within the program. But I've been here since 2007, almost 10 years. October will be 10 years. Wow. And I've seen many suggestions. I put many suggestions in, and I see many of the suggestions I've heard people ask for and I've put in the database for suggestions. I've seen those implemented. So it's your program. We want to know, what works for you. So the programmers, I know they do try to implement, as many of those suggestions as they can. Unfortunately, with those suggestions, it does mean the program does get more detailed and you have to learn new things. And I've seen that occur as well with accounting and donations and all the changes to membership. So it's good that we see the change in the suggestions, but it does make the program a lot more detailed and might mean a little bit more learning. All right. Any other questions? If you're in the middle of typing a question, go ahead and hit enter and send half of your question and then type the rest, and that way I won't close the room before you get the rest of your question typed. Well, I'm waiting to see. If you have any questions that come up after the webinar, definitely give us a call or email support@churchwindows.com. I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm seeing thank yous. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your time, and you enjoy the rest of your day as well. Thank you. I'm seeing people leave. So again, if you have more questions, give us a call or email support. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. I am going to take lunch right now. I take a late lunch. So if you have a question and you call and ask for me, you're going to end up waiting at least an hour before I can call you back. So if you don't mind waiting, ask for me. Or if you have a question, just let the ladies know what you need help with, and then a tech who can help you will call you back. But thanks for attending. This is being recorded and it will be put up on our website. I believe on Thursday, Robert cleans these up and puts them on our website, and it will be available to view then. Thanks for attending, everybody, and have a great day. Bye.